What does it actually take to make a living off of your own music in 2025? I find out today with Isaac Dotson, aka SideStreet, as we talk about his career as an independent artist throughout the music industry. Isaac didn't start in music though. He was first a D1 football player at Washington State University under the legendary coach Mike Leach. And until a brutal injury his senior year, he had to pivot his football dream into his music one. In our talk, we dive deep into how it's been the last 7 years grinding the LA music scene and why he thinks there's still a future for artists just like him to create a profitable career for themselves, even with just a small audience. My name is Trey Nesbitt, and this is The Fringe. Stuck in your bad ways, finding excuses to leave me on. I was talking about how I'm so interested in all different types of industries, whether it's, movies, which is essentially where I kind of come from, and what I've kind of worked in, music, what you currently have worked in for the last,
now,
5
professionally,
years?
It's been 7 years, going on 7 years.
And
so.
you've been in LA for?
In LA for 2 years. And then when COVID hit, I moved back to Seattle for a stint and then came back in 2023. So kind of split up over 6-7 years, basically. Yeah.
But then also athletes. I'm obsessed with sports. You coming from, playing D1 at Washington State. I'm so pumped to kind of hear how that all kind of filtered into music. And, I think there's direct correlation between working hard as an athlete and then taking that energy and pouring into something creative. And I'm obsessed with that process. I'm also obsessed with just, industry wise, hearing about how, we've talked a lot about how film has struggled in the last 5 years, ever since COVID. And I'm pumped to kind of hear about, how you feel about music, making it in music nowadays, working in music in Los Angeles. So I'm excited to have you on and talk about all that. But so you come from Washington.
Yep.
Originally Seattle.
Yep, Seattle area.
What was kind of that first thing, musically, that kind of inspired you as to gave you that little, whether it was a song, whether it was, an artist?
Yeah.
Do you know what it is?
I don't know if there was a moment or anything. I can point out several different moments or influences and things like that. But I became obsessed with the drums. Grew up going to church, and I would my mom would get mad when we wouldn't sing in church or, stand up and be participating. Yeah. But most of the time I was just entranced with the drummer. So I'd be standing there just watching this guy go crazy on the drums. And I was like, I want to do that. That looks so cool. So that was my first love, instrument wise, was the drums for sure. And so got a drum set in third grade, I think, for Christmas. And then I'm sure my sisters and parents loved that. Just me banging on the drums.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's pretty crazy that they were just it's
a lot. But my dad grew up playing instruments in church and everything too. So he was excited for me, I think, at that point. He played piano and everything, growing up too. And kind of all musically inclined by just learning by ear. And so that's kind of what I got into, is I would drum along with my favorite songs. And then I would, sit down at the piano and see if I could find the notes that, were being played, and was kind of gifted with his ear for that, and was able to kind of self-teach myself. Probably picked up a lot of bad habits in doing it that way. If you asked a professional who had professional training and everything, but been able to make it work and kind of just sound out what I like and eventually get it down to recordings. And that's kind of what's brought me here today.
Okay. Yeah. So that kind of took you through. I mean, you were huge. You had to be a huge athlete in high school. Did you feel that's kind of what defined you as far as
I would say so.
Identity, or
I mean, not necessarily identity. I think I've always had a good grasp of what I'm doing is not who I am exactly.
That's awesome.
Been able to separate the two, but
that's great.
But at the same time, it's it's taking up all your time. You're busting your ass all the time with it, and like you said, it's kind of the same way in these industries we're talking about. A lot of those lessons from athletics, especially football, can translate over into real life. And that's why it's such a great game, in my opinion. Yeah. But definitely was the goal was get a D1 scholarship. I'm playing D1, I'm training year round. I'm doing everything I need to do. And that, came to fruition. And my dad was a wrestler back in the 80s at Washington State too. And athletics was always the thing growing up, but music was always the other thing. And so, get done with practice and I'm playing the piano, playing the drums and messing around like that. So
that's sweet. That's sweet. So you went to Washington State kind of because family.
Yeah, definitely. That was a big part of it. Grew up a huge Coug fan and everything, and just knew that was like all I knew because my dad, I would see pictures of him in his WSU singlet, and I just thought he was like a superhero, and it was just the coolest thing. So just being able to have a team and like, especially growing up in Seattle where the Fuskies are, we had to pick a side early on, and it was clear that we were a Coug family. So it was just good to have that growing up. And when it came time to actually make the decision to have the like option to go play at my dream school as a kid, you know what I mean? Was amazing. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. Honestly, it was like all the experiences I've had since then are due to, that decision. So,
were you Washington State, like
decked out?
Yeah. Even like during high school years. So you probably were getting attention from other schools too.
So actually,
did you think about it?
Well, I go through all that, saying I was a huge Coug through and through. I was a quarterback in high school, and I had, I don't know, 7 to 10 like scholarship offers or so, and only one was for a non-quarterback position, and it was just to sign. You can sign as an athlete, which means they can basically take you and develop you in whatever position they want, and that was from Washington State. So I was a dual threat quarterback, and that was the reason they wanted to kind of try me out at some different positions and everything, just because I was a good runner and pretty athletic, and I had played some defense, linebacker, safety in high school too, and I was a bigger frame for the quarterbacks versus what they were looking for, and I didn't really like that because I felt like I had put so much effort into playing quarterback, and I really loved just having who doesn't want the ball in their hands on every play. And I just loved the position and had trained so much, in the off season for that position. And I felt like I can really do this, but I know that if I go to Washington State, they'll probably try to move me somewhere else. They said, quarterback is obviously one of the positions we can see you at. But we also think that you'd probably be able to get on the field earlier if you considered playing linebacker, safety, or even receiver, or switching around a little bit. It's kind of being a jackknife for us. But I didn't really like that. So I wanted to go to, I actually committed to University of Nevada. Because they ran like a dual threat quarterback offense. Basically, that was perfect. Pretty much what I ran in high school. And so it was a perfect fit for me. But then I was committed there for like 6 months. Then their head coach out of the blue kind of retired. And so I had to kind of reevaluate because their whole coaching staff changed, all the people who recruited me. And at that point, I was like, all right, I'll kind of just take a beat, go visit Washington State, see what it's all about, like take an official visit and everything. Went there, and obviously, Mike Leach was there. One of the best recruiters ever, and just legendary coach, rest in peace. But that trip was just like, it just felt like home, you know what I mean? It just felt like this is what I grew up, repping the crimson and gray. And so it only feels right. And, I'm willing to come here. They were like, yeah, come here. You'll come as a quarterback. And then, we'll reevaluate maybe after your first year or anything. It was like a week in fall camp my freshman year. And they were like, all right, you can get on the field as a freshman if you want to switch over to defense. And I was like,
no way.
That sounds good to me. So I switched over to linebacker or safety originally. And then the rest is history. So,
damn, that's crazy. What was it like? Were you having conversations with Mike?
Yeah. I was in, so like that first week of fall camp, like I showed up as a quarterback. You get there early in the summer. So like around this time, actually in June, you get there after you graduate high school. I think it was like 4 days after I was already, driving over to Eastern Washington, to Pullman. Get there and you're already training, you're in the weight room. You got to learn the ways before you guys get ready for fall camp in August. And it's rough, as a 17, 18-year-old kid going through that. It's a rude awakening, especially from when you're the man in high school and you go there.
Oh my God.
Humbled real quick. But so yeah, went through everything. You have like 7-on-7 and, drills and everything you do in the summer position wise. And I was doing everything at quarterback. And then, fall camp came. I was in the quarterback room meeting with Coach Leach and all the other quarterbacks, of course, and practicing those first few days at quarterback. it's funny because the special teams coordinator at the time was a guy who actually recruited my area. So he was the guy who he would come visit me at high school and made me my offer and everything. And he knew what he was doing because he wanted me on special teams. He wanted me to be on kickoff and, punt team, punt return, all this stuff. And he just saw me as kind of like an athletic jackknife, I guess. And so after a few days there, I was playing quarterback. So I was like, and the freshmen kind of fill in where they're needed too, but I was playing quarterback and I had the blue jersey on, and where everybody else is in red and white. And I was doing like kickoff drill in a blue jersey. So it looked kind of funny on film and everything, but the writing was kind of on the wall. And so after a few days, they were like, "You're doing great. You're doing fine. But, if we could use you on the field this year, if you switch over." And so that's when that kind of happened. Yeah. But being in meetings with Mike Leach is probably like the top most interesting, meetings I've ever been in my life for sure, because it would be like watch one play, fast forward, rewind, and then all of a sudden he's talking about like how he owned a raccoon pet when he was a kid in Cody, Wyoming, and all these crazy stories would just pop up out of the blue, just full character through and through. And of course we'd be in meetings later than anybody else. It'd be like 2-hour long meetings. Everybody else in bed. Yeah. But it was a great experience for sure.
That's crazy. Yeah. That's crazy that Mike Leach, because he was there all 4 years, right?
Yeah. So I was there 4.5 technically, but 5 seasons, because I redshirted my second year due to injury. But he was there the whole time. And in a selfish way, I'm kind of like glad that, it was just basically his entire stint minus a year before and a year after that I was there, that I got Mike Leach as my head coach at Washington State. Because it was just such a special time, and he really just flipped the program on its head. And
talk about what kind of you guys were good.
We were good. We were like top 10 my junior and senior year. We got to number 8 in the country, and we're 8-9 win seasons, which compared to years prior, like the year before I got there, they were 3-9.
Right,
and that was his first year there. And then it was just like he came in and it was like, it's going to be my way or the highway, basically. So a lot of that first year of mine was, guys quitting because they were used to another, underperforming culture and all this stuff, or guys who they just were trying to drive out because they felt like we were a cancer to the team. And it worked. Like, he did everything he needed to. And then my group, we were his first real recruiting class that he didn't adopt from the previous staff. And so we were able to just stick together this core group of 20 guys, all the way through those 5 years, and watch the program just completely, 180 to the other direction. So it was great. Yeah.
That's crazy. Cause he's in my mind, at least, he's a top 10 college football.
For sure.
He's in the first, he might even be, when I think of modern day college football coaches, and maybe it's because of some of his sound bites, but he comes to mind pretty quick.
Yeah.
Especially with the turnaround. I feel Washington State always felt a little bit like Iowa State to me. Even thinking back when because I was a year younger than you. Just the way that, did you ever feel like little brother sometimes to Washington? As much as you hate to admit it, because I hate to admit it to Iowa.
Yeah.
But whenever somebody thinks of the football program in Iowa, they're thinking of the Hawkeyes.
Right. Yeah. There's definitely an aspect of that. But yeah, we definitely did everything in our, power to just weed that was part of the mentality that existed there when we were at Washington State. It was just time to go and, get our butts kicked by the Huskies. But we fully, I think, we created our identity as legit competitors in the Pac-12, and we were gunning for that top 2 spot my junior and senior year.
Right.
Unfortunately, we did lose to the Huskies both of those years, and those had implications for us going to the Pac-12 championship.
RIP the Pac-12.
Yeah, RIP Pac-12. It's crazy how everything's changed too. That's a whole different
Yeah, it's wild because you're one of the independents now, right?
Well, they're kind of constructing the Pac-12 with some of the schools from the Mountain West. So it's like Boise State, San Jose State,
interesting.
Fresno State. A lot of those schools that I think in 2026, if I'm not mistaken. At least that was the plan. The most recent news I've gotten. But it's just all different, man. It's just so.
Do you ever? as like a kid, now thinking of it, you're recruited coming out of high school. How do you think about like the NIL days?
I have so many emotions about it. I think part of it is obviously just jealousy. Like, why couldn't I have been born, 10 years younger and be coming out of college with some dough in my pocket, regardless of, NFL, non-NFL, these kids are going to be set for a good amount of time. They could really set themselves up for life.
Even the lower, everybody's getting paid.
But yeah, man, it's wild. Like, some of these kids are getting paid millions of dollars to do what we did. So, it's definitely different. I'm excited in a way about that, obviously, but I was worried. I was reassured recently. I talked with, I was just up in Seattle, and one of my coaches from Washington State is now coaching at UW. And I was just kind of trying to get a feel from him about what the like culture's like. Because in my mind, it's like, oh, these kids are going to just have egos through the roof. They're going to be making all kinds of demands about what they, should be paid and everything. And it's just like a mess, I'm sure. But he kind of reassured me. He was like, actually, there's been kind of a shift back. Like, COVID kind of messed everything up, obviously the whole world, and athletics included, and college athletics included. But he told me, like, there's been kind of a shift back to kids really just loving the game. And that's been the main priority. Obviously, there are kids who are just going to go wherever the bag is and wherever they can get the most amount of money. But I don't know, it was kind of reassuring just hearing that from him. And he's like a football guy. Like, he's like very like traditional, like loyalty, all the lessons of football. He's going to, teach. And so to hear from him that kids are kind of shifting back in that direction, it just depends on the culture of the school, really. Right. It's just a case by case basis. So
what do you think Mike Leach would have thought about it?
It's interesting. And along the same lines, like, nowadays it's kind of just adapt or die, right? They can't, what are they going to do? Like, not pay these kids? They're not going to have a team. They're not, things will just fall through. And so in my mind, when all this was happening, I was like, it seems like Coach Leach left us like right before the downfall of the, college football world that we came to love. And the timing was kind of like poetic in that way. But he's an innovator himself. You know what I mean? So there's no way that he wouldn't have done what he had to do to, have his teams be successful. And the thing about him, he's so set in his philosophies. He's never like from year 1 to year 5 when I was there, our meetings, we could damn near recite the meeting, beginning to end when we got there for fall camp, and he's addressing the freshmen. And it was just, the message never changed. Like, very few, standards it wasn't like a big list of rules or anything like that. He had very few bullet points and just things that this is what we're about. Do your job, be the most excited to play, be the best at doing your job. And that's just kind of what we live by. And he would stick with that as well. So in a way, it's like these days he would definitely find a way to make that cut through. And he wasn't going to like bend for any particular athlete. He was cutting our best players my freshman year because they didn't live up to the standard.
Yeah, he didn't give a fuck.
Yeah, so it was he would have been that same way these days, but obviously would have had to adapt or die like everyone in that coaching position these days with the NIL stuff. But
yeah, I always think about that, like how certain coaches, even from the past, would have reacted to it. Because you see like certain coaches today, they're just like, I can't do this.
Yeah,
I'm just out of here. You see it a lot like in like basketball.
Basketball is insane.
It's crazy.
I have buddies who are kind of in that space, in the management space these days, which is funny to say that now these college athletes have managers and everything.
Yeah.
And some
managers,
of the
agents,
some of the payouts for these kids are absolutely insane. And just like the culture of like, coach access to coaches and being able to just like broker basically trades and everything like that, or transfers and just get these kids deals with Lamborghini and, it's insane. I can't even think about that. It's not the experience that I had in college at all.
Right. Yeah. It's just totally shifted.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all these things are kind of like shifting, and it all kind of like felt like a lot of things were happening around like the COVID.
Yep.
A lot of things like kind of reset.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was just because maybe everybody's just spending too much time inside or something.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're just going to fix all this shit, or we're just going to do all these different types of rules. It seems like a lot of things changed.
Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest ones, especially when
Absolutely.
it comes to sports. I love hearing about Mike Leach. You guys, I looked back and I did, Iowa State played Washington State.
Alamo Bowl.
Alamo Bowl.
I wasn't there. That was the year after me. But
I was there.
yeah.
Sucked. It sucked so much. Now, me and my
a good
friends,
game, though.
it was a great game. Me and my friends were such, degenerate like gamblers, especially back then because gambling just became legal in Iowa right before this game. So we put so much, so much money. We didn't have any money, but we put a good amount of money on Iowa State plus 2.5. We lost by 2. Yeah, and oh man.
That was a barn burner. That was a fun one to watch.
It was Gardner Minshew.
It was Minshew.
Did you play with Minshew?
I didn't. So he was like the year after me.
Did he transfer in or what?
Yeah, he transferred from East Carolina.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
Luke Falk was our quarterback.
He was a stud.
Yeah, like Pac-12 still holds all these Pac-12 records and everything that'll probably never be touched because the Pac-12 is no longer what it was. But
you get to just solidify this.
Yeah, right.
That's kind of cool.
So yeah, Minshew came in the next year, but Gardner is like my roommate Peyton Pallure. He played linebacker with me. We were right next to each other on the field. He played in that game because he had an injury that gave him an extra year. Oh, okay. And then he and Gardner were like roommates and besties and everything. Yeah. So the Coug blood runs deep.
Yeah, but I mean, that was like the best year Iowa State's ever had, and that was a great year for Washington State. Yeah. But yeah, that's crazy. So I mean, you are in you go through were you doing music stuff in college?
Yeah, man. So I would literally get done. It's funny, they used to have these things called Pac-12 profiles, which is kind of like on the Pac-12 networks, the TV channel. They would have like, oh, what are these student athletes doing off the field? And we actually had one about myself and a teammate, Taylor Taliulu, who introduced me to Logic and like showed me how far you could actually take music production and everything. And we had like our own little thing. So we had our little studio set up in his apartment, and they came through Pac-12 networks with the cameras and everything. And we were like making beats and everything. It was fun.
That's cool.
But it was like after practice, I would literally just go home, do my homework, of course, and then just get to making beats and everything. So it was and then I had a couple teammates who like found out, and then they started coming through, and I would record them. So that's how I really got into engineering, is and recording other people. Is I would make these songs myself. I would share them with teammates, and they're like, "Oh, I rap too, or I sing too, whatever." They'd come over, and I had my little bedroom set up and everything, and we'd make music in there. And that skill set is kind of what, even though I was just learning everything DIY, just learning from YouTube and everything, it allowed me to now kind of build the blocks to create a business on it. So it's been I'm glad that that is something that I fostered and kind of built up during those college days. Yeah.
So you learned a lot of stuff on like YouTube. I know you said one of your buddies taught you a little bit of Logic, or just like introduced you to it.
Yeah. So I kind of knew what it was, and I had it, but I was like, I think just spending time, collaboration, man, it's so big, because it just opens your eyes to different approaches to things, and it opens your eyes to different skills that you didn't know, or even technically things that you didn't know your software could do. And so just getting in a room with somebody else is such a huge thing. That's something I've learned over the years as well. But yeah, he showed me some, and the rest of it was just like, I love being resourceful and self-sufficient. And so if I can figure out how to do something, I want to figure out how to do it. And so that comes, I think, from just like sitting down at the piano and trying to figure out what notes are being played, and learn songs by ear. It's the same thing with learning the software and all the technical skills and everything.
Sure. That's cool. I mean, anything like nowadays, there's just so many like resources to learn all the shit. Yeah. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Whether it's cameras, sound stuff.
YouTube University, baby.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So you're doing some stuff in college. How were you mentally? What was your degree in?
Business marketing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Same. I was like business, finance, economics, whatever.
I didn't really know when I got there exactly. I was like, I majored in football, like they say, you know what I mean? That was taking up all my time and everything. Obviously I have my degree. I'm very grateful for the education I got to. But like football just takes up, that's all you can really think about, especially getting there as a freshman. You're like, my life is football now, you know? And Leach was big on education too. That's another thing that improved when he got there, is our average GPA went up every year on the team, and he did not play about academics. But still, it was like I got there and I was like, I don't really know what I want to do. I just want to play football, and
Right.
so business marketing's cool. Sure, I'll do that. And then it just kind of stuck with it. And I actually learned a lot, obviously, but those last few years, just learning like digital marketing and everything like that. But even the stuff I learned, a lot of that stuff is obsolete now because it's just with the internet and digital marketing, everything just changes day to day. Social media, like that's become, the majority of what marketing is today. So the traditional kind of stuff that we were learning, I feel like is not as relevant now. But,
No. Oh my God. Anything I learned in college, I don't.
I know.
I even work like a finance job today, but like none of that shit. I
it
was
just
doing
doesn't
like
apply.
calculus and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I'm never going to be
Yeah.
doing that when like who's
Of course.
doing that?
No,
You
I
know?
don't know.
It's crazy.
Scientists, I don't know.
But so you talked about earlier how like you felt like you had I've talked with other, friends who were athletes who are still athletes to this day, or, filmmakers, actors, whatever. A lot of their identity is kind of like written in that. So, as you get to the end of your college career, were you thinking like, I wanted to keep playing, try to keep pursuing that? Were you okay with like letting that go?
Yeah. So I had a pretty bad draw with concussions, and I had a pretty bad concussion my senior year.
Oh man.
That was, the symptoms were like enough to make me be like, okay, is this really what I like? Do I want to just keep banging my head for the next, decade and everything
Right.
like that? When, you're watching these guys that are taking their own lives, that are, struggling mentally after clearly like different people from when they exit the game than when they were when they started. And so I just had to kind of take a moment and be like, consider what was actually going on. And then the doctors were like, you should consider another career.
Really?
Yeah. So it got to that point. They were like, flew me out to Seattle. I was having to do these tests and stuff with like the Seahawks concussion specialists and everything like that. And it's got to be a lot. And I was like, football is, while it's been my whole life, it's, this much in a long life. So I'm not going to, I have goals for the future too, beyond sports and beyond football, and the things I want to accomplish. And I want to be able to be present with my family, remember my kids' names, and like not be, a potato by the time I'm 40 years old. So,
What types of symptoms were you having?
I was, well, headaches, obviously. The thing that got me and kind of freaked me out the most is, it was like a friendly fire hit we're playing at Oregon, and we're like kicking their ass. It was the best start to a game I'd had in a long time. And then friendly fire, like boom, head to head with a teammate, and instantly you kind of just like just things get like blurry and not blurry, but just like feel a little off. And my coach, I had a history of concussions. He recognized it. He pulled me out right away. He was like, just sit tight for a sec. And then the trainer came up to me, and then next thing I know, I'm in the locker room and listening to the game on the radio the whole time. Jeez. And so then we get back to Pullman that night, and one of the trainers comes up to me and he's like, hey, you doing all right? Like checking in on me. And I'm like, yeah, I'm all right. A little bit of a headache, but he's like, yeah, you really freaked out in the locker room. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, you were throwing helmets. Apparently I had like a full blown tantrum that I don't remember. So that was like the moment that I was like, that's kind of scary. So that was like the wake up call for me.
Yeah.
And that was like the beginning of it, obviously. He's like, you were throwing helmets around, punching lockers and stuff like that. And I just had no recollection of that. So it was very strange. But that's what started all the testing and stuff like that. And then obviously, you're on a certain protocol for a certain amount of weeks, and you have to take this test every day and on the computer, and it's pretty exhausting. But those lingering symptoms, my vision was a little messy, and then headaches and just things of that nature. And Jeez. Eventually, though, it got to a point where at the end of the season, they were like, we recommend that you just be done. But this is, at the end of the day, this is your call. It's your, wow. career. Definitely would consider, other career options if I was you. And so it got to that point, and we had 2 games left, and I was like, I want to finish the season, and then that'll be it for me. I'll hang them up after that. So I played in those 2 games, and we won, and then we went to the Holiday Bowl, lost that to Michigan State. But But yeah, man, it was just like a roller coaster ride. And I had like 4 concussions through college, and that was like the biggest thing. But football is a very unforgiving game, and
That's
it's the best
crazy.
game in the world, but you know, it's not, it doesn't really always love you back. And I
Right.
got a bad draw. I'm not like sitting here saying football is evil, and it's not. It's the best game ever. I got a bad draw. And I know guys who have never had concussions that have had played long careers through the NFL,
Right.
you know, and or diagnosed concussions, but never any extreme symptoms or anything like that. So that's just kind of how it was for me. But I knew once that was over, it was like, all right, what's next?
Mm-hmm.
And music was always right there. You know, I was getting
Yeah.
home from practice, like I said, and making music. So I was like, why not just have that, my life reflect that too? So it was the next step. And
Right.
that's when I moved to LA.
That's crazy. So like, yeah, right after college, then you moved to LA.
Yeah. So I was home. I moved back to Bellevue for a little while. I was just kind of plotting things out a little bit. And then I had a sister who was living down here. And I kind of told her, I was like, I'm thinking about just like coming down and, you know, pursuing something in music down there. And she's like, absolutely, do it. And she works in like marketing and production and everything, but she's really interested in music videos, and she does a lot of that stuff. And she's helped me with some music videos as well. Super talented. But she's like, move down, super supportive. So she like encouraged it, and I was like, all right, cool, I'll do that. And then so I moved down like October or September of the following. I got done in January at Washington State, and then September I was moving down to LA, kind of trying to make something work. And,
Okay.
And then I was like, well, I got to find a job, obviously. And I got into personal training just because I was like, this is all I've been doing is working out for the past 5 years,
Right.
10 years. So let's see what I can do with that. And that led to a job at Equinox, which is where I met the first artist I toured with, Marky Bassy. And then that kind of just, you know, got me fully entrenched in the music world.
So you didn't know many people at all,
No, not at all.
music wise.
No.
Coming down.
I had a couple buddies who had like kind of done, oh yeah, I'm moving to LA for something creative, video, or
Right.
so I connected with them and was just trying to get a feel for everything. But it's a weird jump for anybody who, you know, does
Yeah.
that, as you know.
Yeah.
It's kind of a culture shock when you get to LA and just but it for me it was refreshing because it was always like music was something that you just had to kind of like, oh, and I also do, you know, music or something like that. Or especially growing up in Seattle, everybody's like tech and education and like super like, which is great. But for me, it was always like a little bit weird to be like, oh, I'm an artist or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
But moving to LA, it was like all everybody wants to talk about, of course. So it was just refreshing to be in a space where people are like, oh, so what's your thing? Like, oh, you're from here and you do this, but why are you in LA? Like, what's your passion? Like, what are you doing out here? So I was like, oh, that was a cool thing for me to experience. And the first time I'd really kind of been in a place like that. So
Yeah. How were you mentally, like coming down initially, living in LA for a little bit, working at Equinox?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like you met Marc somewhat soon.
Yeah, really soon, actually.
Oh, really? Okay.
So it's funny because he had done a show at Washington State in 2016 or something like that. And and it was Taylor, the buddy I keep talking about, who had shown me his music. And then Taylor we had like a spring festival, music festival at our school. And like Waka Flocka was the headliner, and Marc was one of the openers. And then there was another Seattle artist, Travis Thompson, who was another, you know, act on the show. And so there's a handful of artists there. And then they wanted like a student opener too. So Taylor took that and he did a set there too. But he got like backstage passes and everything. So I remember we were coming back from our spring game, and he was like, yo, you got to come like get here as soon as you can, and I'll get you backstage, and you can meet all the artists and everything. And I was like, that was my first time like in any kind of music setting like that. So I was like, dope. So I get all the way down there, and then he, you know, brings me backstage. I'm meeting Waka Flocka and, you know, sitting there with Marc, and he had just shown me Marc's music. And so I was like a huge fan. And so it was cool. And then end of the night, like show's ending, and Marc's like, so what are we doing? And we were like, we're in Pullman, Washington. We have 2 bars. So it wasn't like the best place to host celebrities or anything.
Right.
But he's like, let's go out. Let's go, you know, grab a drink, whatever. So we go to the bars and we're just having a fun time. We end up going back to Taylor's apartment. We're showing him some of the music we make and everything. Anyway, that happened. Fast forward, I'm at Equinox, and Marc walks in, and I'm like, oh shit, like is why I'm here. You know what I mean? Like I'm not here to be a personal trainer. I'm here to make connections and everything, and obviously pay the bills. But a place like Equinox, there's, high profile people walking around all over the place. So went up to him and I showed him some pictures from that night. I was like, hey man, you remember doing a show at Washington State? And he was like, oh yeah. And he actually like described the night and everything. And I was like, okay, so you're not just bullshitting me. And I was like, let's do some training sessions. I wasn't immediately like, oh, put me on, man. I make beats or anything like that. But got into training and slowly was kind of trickling in the fact that I made music too. And showed him, eventually got to the point where I showed him some songs. He's like, yo, these are dope. Then a few sessions later, he's like, yo, you should come on tour with us. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, we're going on tour with Jon Bellion this summer.
No shit.
Yeah. And I was like, I definitely know that guy. Cause me and Taylor would watch his YouTube videos of him like making beats. He was like our biggest inspiration in college. And then he was like, the last tour was kind of like a blur. Like I was out of shape. We were just like partying 24/7. So I want somebody to help like keep me accountable. That's obviously what you've been doing as my trainer. And then you also know how to record and make music. So we're going to have a little studio set up on the bus so you can help me out with that too. And I was like, say less. And I quit my job. We went on the road for 2 months, 35 cities. Incredible. Like the most fun summer of my
35 cities?
35 stops.
What year was this?
This was 2019, the Glory Sound Prep Tour for Jon Bellion.
Holy shit.
So it was Bellion, Bassy, and then this band called Lawrence, who's super talented band.
Yeah.
But just, it was like being exposed to all that. I hit the jackpot when it comes to moving to LA to chase your dreams. Like, I hit the jackpot. A lot of people, come down here and have hopes for things like that and don't get to accomplish it and, in a lifetime. But I think just being able to kind of naturally network and build off of, warm connections you already have and just be of service to people is ultimately what got me on to be able to have those opportunities and everything. So obviously those 2 months developed a relationship with Marc, ended up producing a song for him on the tour. We were recording like every day on the bus. And so that was the beginning of my LA experience, and it was ideal. Like
that is
couldn't have drawn it up any better. And that led to another tour with him. And he's actually going on the road here pretty soon again. I haven't toured with him since then, but yeah, I'm extremely thankful and blessed to have had those experiences.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Just off question of that, what was your favorite city?
Chicago. I think Chicago or Nashville is pretty fun.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to pick. And I'd never been to Chicago before that. Never been to New York before that. And like being on the West Coast, like we have like big cities, but Seattle to me was like, oh, it's a big city when you're growing up, over there, because you're going to downtown Seattle and there's big buildings and everything, or so I thought. Yeah. And then like Portland is like big city, whatever, but LA, big city, of course, that's a big city. But you go to New York, and I was like, I can't see the tops of these buildings. Like this is a city. And so I think being in that, and then Chicago too, the same way, being in those settings and like feeling like I was on a movie set was just insane.
That's wild.
So I'd say Chicago was probably my favorite though.
Okay. So 35 different places over a summer?
Yep. Yeah. Over 2 months. So it was literally, the routine was get to a city, basically like bus pulls up to the venue. My job, I would find a gym for us to go get a workout in, go boom, take Marc through a workout, come back to the bus, eat, do whatever we got to do. He'd have sound check. And then maybe we'd even record on the bus a little bit before the show and just get some ideas down or anything like that. And then, sound check. And then he was the second opener. So show 30-minute set or something like that. And most of the shows start at 8:30, his set. So it's 9 p.m. And then we'd stay and watch Bellion, the first few stops. And then after a while, it was like, we're basically just go explore this, whatever city you're in by night, go out, have fun, party. That's fun. It was great. And then wake up, you're in a new city like the next day and you kind of do it all over again.
That's crazy. Yeah, what's the biggest thing you learned coming off of like that? I mean, you just dove right into it.
Yeah.
So you had to learn a bunch of
things. It was a lot.
Yeah,
I was definitely drinking from a fire hose, but I think just people think like, oh, you're just like an artist, or you're just like in the creative space, just the business side of things and how many things all the dominoes have to be perfectly aligned for like a successful tour in general, but a successful travel show to show. Like there's so many important people and business decisions that are being made in that process. And that was my first time actually getting exposure to that, scene. And I was pulling my weight however I could really on the tour. It wasn't like I was just training Marc and then recording him and then sitting there with my arms crossed, like helping out however I could, going on bus grocery runs and, picking up Marc's dry cleaning if I needed to, or whatever it was, doing laundry and everything. Like I was just trying to be of service. And I think that paid off for sure. But just like, you think it's all just like glamorous and everything, but there's a lot of work that comes into it. And you have to be like adaptable too, because some shows sound's going to go out. Like some shows, Marc lost his voice a couple times on tour. So he was like in the back of the bus, not talking to anybody, drinking tea all day. Like there's just certain things that you have to be very particular about in order to be a successful tour, honestly. And that was really cool for me to get exposure to. And
that's crazy. I have one friend, crazy enough. I met him in Des Moines. Mm-hmm. He was like a manager for, he's lower than Marc, I would say. Or at the time he was hot. He had one like big hit and he was touring with Arizona.
This is Dakota, right?
Dakota. Yeah, you talked to him about this.
Yeah, we sat next to each other at the wedding.
He just said it's chaos.
Yeah.
It was just chaos. He did it for like a summer
nonstop.
year. It's just insane.
Yeah.
And he was like managing, making sure like sound systems were working and stuff.
Yeah. Everybody kind of just has to be able to jump in wherever you're needed and like help out. And so if you don't know how to do something, you're going to learn it basically at a certain point. So you got to just, the more in an environment like that, the more people are willing to jump in and help, the more successful you'll be. And that's a tough decision as an artist too. And this is why I respect Marc a lot, is you got to be able to assemble a team that you can trust, first of all, because this is your name and your brand on this tour. And you got to be able to, delegate and say, I'm trusting you with this to make this show go as it's supposed to. So, that artist better have trust in that person, and they better pull their weight and get it done. Because there's a lot of distractions on the road too, obviously. And, it is like a party environment for a lot of it too, but it's definitely a business operation.
Right. Especially with, nowadays, everybody's name is like a brand. Mm-hmm. That's their brand. 100%. So if you have like a shitty show where, things fall apart, that's like who you are. That's what people think of you as.
Absolutely.
So like doing a tour like that is humongous.
Yeah. And we were fortunate to have, Jon Bellion is, I feel like in the last few years, he's really, blown up, but he's always had a cult following. If I showed you some of the videos from his shows, it's like some people were not as familiar. He's got like a very like niche, I think, group of followers, but it's massive, and it's, they just love him, and he's just there for those fans, like very open book, and wants to like reach out and touch them really. So it was cool to see that. And Marc's the same way. Like you got fans that would go to multiple stops on the tour and do meet and greet just so they could hang out with Marc and like say what's up, and he knows them by name, and they're giving him, bringing him baked goods and stuff like that. It's kind of crazy, but yeah, it was quite the experience. And then going from that tour, so that tour was a little bit bigger. It was like semi trucks and like big old bus, like 2 buses and everything, or 2 or 3 buses, I think. And then Marc's headline tour was just it was like smaller, more intimate venues. The next time around it was like 500 to 1,000 cap venues. And everybody was pulling their weight. It wasn't as like, because we were the headliner, so it wasn't as like, go explore and do whatever you want between shows. It was like, no, you are the show, and then once you're done, you're loading out, you're back on the bus, you're getting ready to go to the next city and start it all up again. So it was a lot more like work. I was selling merch on that tour, and it was still a fun time, obviously, and great music every night, which made it all worth it. But it can be a lot of work. Yeah.
So you got off those tours. When was the last time you went out on those?
So the first one was started in June of 2019.
Yeah.
And then the second one was actually started in January of 2020.
So you got cut.
And I think we had 5 shows left in California or something like that. And it was like, our last show was in Santa Cruz, and everybody was talking about this COVID thing, and we're all like, yeah, whatever. But then they were like, nope, tour's done. Everybody's going home. That's it. And the last show we did was in, Santa Cruz. And we were supposed to have like, a couple other SoCal shows, which he has a lot of people in LA. So that would have, everybody was looking forward to that too. But we sent home, and then next thing you know, we're holed up in the house for a year or whatever it was.
How long until you went to Seattle?
So yeah.
Was that like it was happening?
It ended in March, and then Seattle, I moved back. I want to say it was like September, October.
Oh, wow. So you were here
so
for
I was
a
around.
bit.
Yeah, I was around, just chilling in LA. But then it just got to the point where it was like, seemed like the circle of people that I knew that were being like seriously affected, losing family members to COVID and all this stuff was like kind of getting smaller and smaller, closer to home. And I was like, okay, this is getting kind of freaky. This thing is, serious. So that's when I was like, I want to get home and, just be around my family. And,
for sure,
if this is the end of the world. but
things were so crazy back then.
Yeah.
I still remember, I don't know what, I felt like COVID started, a huge basketball fan when Rudy Gobert touched all those like microphones.
Exactly.
It was like that happened. And the next day it was like, all right, everything's shut down. Because like 3 people got COVID from him.
It was nuts.
It was wild.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So, how things got shut down. That's 2020. You go back to Seattle. How are you feeling? What are you doing? Are you starting to work on your own stuff?
Yeah. So,
okay. Yeah. Is that when that kind of started then?
Well, the whole time I'd kind of been...
Or you probably always...
Yeah, I'd kind of been like writing songs and producing and everything. And I'd been working with, I'd gotten a couple like things placed in different like ads and everything for songs and everything like that. But got back, so everything shut down, moved back to Seattle. I was back into personal training again, and just kind of went back to what I'd been doing, because there weren't any real like recording sessions or anything going on in studios and stuff like that. But then moved back to Seattle, got another job at a small gym, was training there, and then actually was fortunate enough to have a studio in Renton, Washington, which was just kind of down the hill from Seattle. And so I had my own studio space, which was dope. And then things kind of started to, open back up a little bit. But basically I was just locked in there, man. I was like in there making my own stuff and recording and making beats and just sending things out and seeing what I could make shake. And that's when I kind of started to be like, I want to try this artist thing out too, like for real, and like really start to release music and everything. And I've got all these skills. I can make a song from start to finish now, because I've developed and learned all this stuff. So why not? And I love writing music. And so then I had like a handful of songs, and I would show them to people, and they were really, really liking them. And then that's when I kind of came up with SideStreet and started to release music under SideStreet, and got some pretty good response from my first little EP and everything, and just kind of kept it going from there. And
was that 21?
That was 2021. Yep. So
and what was that EP called again?
The SideStreet EP. Yeah. Okay. So that was my first one, 5 songs. Yeah. I feel like I still haven't like found my sound yet, and that's something you'll hear a lot like in the artist space, like, oh, they're still finding their sound for new artists and everything. And I think I am, but I also feel like I just like making everything. Like I like producing in all kinds of different genres and trying out different things. And I feel like I still lend, as an artist, I still lend like a consistent sound to maybe a different style of production. Yeah. And I can kind of manipulate songs to be cohesive, even if they are a little bit different, like in their root of, what the genre is or whatever. Sure. So I just try not to be like, oh, this is the type of artist I am, or this is the type of artist I am. I only make this music. I only make that. I have friends who make music in other genres who I've collaborated with, and I just kind of hop into their lane a little bit when necessary. But that's kind of what I want SideStreet to be, is like a little bit for everybody, you know what I mean? And that's the opposite of what they'll tell you. They'll say like, you need a niche, you need to
find your niche.
Yeah, you need to like have your one sound that people can identify you by. And I don't know, I've kind of wrestled with that, but I'm still kind of testing out a lot of sounds, and I haven't gotten to I don't think I've had anything reach an audience that's gotten a reaction worthy of like, oh, this is worth kind of hunkering down in this lane for a little while. So I'm still very much just kind of testing things out and having fun doing it.
But you've always had like positive reaction whenever you're like putting stuff out. I know you say like you haven't found like that sound, or like you feel like you know, something hasn't like hit. But I feel like anytime I look at your stuff or listen to any of your stuff, there's always positive like reaction.
Sure. Yeah. You know? I think you're right. I think I definitely have had positive reaction to the majority of the things that I put out.
Right.
And a lot of that is just contingent upon like how much you're willing to push it into people's faces. And that's a lot of what the music industry is today. It's just kind of not stopping until people are, the song is literally stuck in their head. And then it's like, oh, well, this is, you know, that's marketing. I mean, that's one thing I remember learning from marketing in college is like, I think it's 7 times, or you have to be exposed to something 7 times or something like that before you can actually even consider like becoming a customer or becoming anything like that, you know?
Yeah.
Or adopting it or accepting it. And so that's just kind of part of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And
there's that marketing from college. But I heard, I forget where he said this, but Tyler, the creator, said something like this. I don't know if it was recent or a while ago, but I heard it recently where he's like, you know, I'll see people just post their shit on their Instagram like one time. Yeah. It's like, bitch, you worked on this for days. It's like, what are we talking about?
It is a crazy thing. Like, and I'm guilty of that too. Like, I think one thing that people are realizing, especially now with social media, is that music can truly be timeless. And I feel like it was the placement of the Stranger Things song, Running Up That Hill or whatever it was, that song's from the 80s, you know what I mean? But it's just gotten such a crazy surge just from being in Stranger Things and then from social media. And like, you remember the dude who was like longboarding and had the cranberry juice and was listening to Fleetwood Mac. So like, boom, surge in that song. So I think a lot of people are realizing how valuable it is to just have a catalog of music that can eventually, they can pop at any time. Like, as long as it has a moment. But it's definitely what Tyler said is so true. And that's something that artists just hate. A lot of artists that I've worked with, not all artists, but like, and me as well. It's just weird, like, to just spam people all the time with your stuff, but you have to like pop your shit. You have to like really put yourself out there in order to, because you put so much work into the music, and people don't really realize that. All they hear is just a song, see a post that they can swipe by. But it's a lot. It is a lot of work. It's a lot of second guessing and a lot of time spent, you know, just, is this even worth it? Like, what am I even doing? And then you have days where you're like, oh, I'm the best artist that ever walked the planet. Like, this is dope. If people don't understand this, then they're missing out, whatever. But keeping those two kind of extremes in check is definitely the toughest thing as an artist. And that's where having a network of just reliable people, kind of going back to what you were saying about just like, oh, your stuff's been getting like positive reaction. You got to have that final like group of people you trust that you can kind of dish it out to, not just friends who are going to say, oh yeah, this is dope, because they're your friends, because people will do that. They'll just tell you it's good because they're trying to be a supportive friend. So that was one thing I had to really consider. And before I dropped my first project, I had like a moment where I was like, I need to get like professional ears on this from like a creative standpoint. I need to get professional ears on this from a technical standpoint, and get legit feedback. Like, please don't just tell me this is good or, oh, this is dope, good job. Like, just to say that, like, give me some feedback. And you kind of got to pry people, because that can be awkward for some people. But fortunately, I have like a network of people that I can do that with, that both from the creative side and the technical side, and then of course just the fans, or just general audience and followers, like, that you can get feedback and kind of get a feel for what this song will do. But I think that just having actual people who know what you're trying to accomplish and can actually relate to it, that you can say, how are we feeling about this? Is this good? Am I missing something? Whatever, like, give me some technical feedback, and they'll give you some feedback, and you make the tweaks, and then you just send it off into the universe. And then, like Tyler said, though, you got to really push it.
Yeah. Which, speaking of, you can go get his EP right now on Even.
Yes.
Right. We'll put the link in the description.
Thank you.
You can, it's one of those, and I want to talk to you about this too, when it comes to money and getting paid. And it's one of those platforms where it's kind of like a donation. I know that like Radiohead did this, which they didn't have to do it, but they did for In Rainbows when it came out in like, do you know what I'm talking about? 2007, they did the same sort of thing.
Exactly. That's
back when like, technology isn't where it is right now. Mm-hmm. So what kind of, and people should go on, buy the album. What kind of caused you to do something like that?
Yeah, it's just,
and where do you see like going forward? Is it more stuff like that for like smaller artists? Do you think
so? Yeah. So especially with this platform, even that I found, like there's this rapper named La Russell who was kind of like the spearhead of the project. He didn't invent the platform, but he is very much like I think he did the first project on there. And his whole thing is like, my art is priceless. Mm-hmm. And he's someone who 100% recognizes like, he's got everything in order when it comes to business and, getting everything out in front of the world and marketing things properly. But his thing is, my art to me is priceless. So what is it worth to you? Like, I'm not going to put a $10. Why would you cap yourself out on something that could be because, I've had people be like, yo, your song just took me out of a really dark place, or, this song really helped me so much, thank you so much. Or just, dude, I love this song so much. Like, I play it all the time. My kids love it. They dance to it. All this stuff. So it's like, it has a special like place. I'm sure you have a song like that you're just like, sure. Oh, this is my song and it took me out of this place. Or, I don't know, man. It's like, why put a cap on something that could be worth more to other people? And it is kind of a weird thing. Like it's just unorthodox for people to be like, oh, pay whatever you want for it. And that can put people in kind of a weird place. But especially starting out, or for new artists who still may have music that people really relate to and that they really like or they really believe in. Like, how many artists have you found and you're like, well, how does this guy only have so many followers? Or how does it, like, this is crazy. This is so good. And there's something about being an early adopter too, or just being, oh, I knew so-and-so before they popped off. Like I've been following them for years, that people want to have. So if you hear something and you really believe in somebody, their trajectory and where they could end up, why not make an investment early on? And the thing is, like with this platform, there's like exclusive things that you can add. And I'm adding a couple right now. I just added a music video that people can watch for my song Lessons. But other things like merch, or like, meetups with fans, like one-on-ones and question and answer sessions, and like all the way to like, oh, I'll give you a verse on a song, like in exchange for, there's just like the possibilities are endless. And it's all just about creating a community that you can actually kind of tangibly connect with, whereas like if I just went and I release a song on streaming and everybody listens to it on Spotify, it'll be like, oh, like I stream your song all the time. Well, a stream on Spotify is $0.003 basically. So 3/100ths of a cent per stream. So basically it's a lot easier for me to be like, pay me $1. Like here, at the end of the day, it is a business, and you obviously want to create a sustainable business. So why not open that floodgate up front? And by no means is even supposed to replace streaming in a way. It's just like an early access and exclusive. And for those real fans, for those diehards, it's kind of like just leaking your own music early before the rest of the world gets it. And if you're really rocking with me, then cool. Like come support, pay whatever you want. And you get access to the music before everybody else,
Right.
So that exclusivity factor, but it's still going to go out on streaming. It'll be out there eventually, but it's just a way to kind of open those floodgates and hopefully identify who those fans are and who's really messing with you from the beginning. And then you can, reward them in certain ways and build that actual connection with people and build a community.
Right. It's like, it's like a Patreon, but it's like song specific, like a Patreon, you like pay for like a membership or something like that.
But this is like project based.
Exactly. Yeah. Which I think is what's needed for stuff, outside of like podcasts.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Whether it's, I even think like movies and TV, I think is in a horrible place right now. And I think a lot of it, in most industries, it's like the top has all the money. I mean,
Right.
that's just kind of how like
Right.
the economy is right now.
Right.
But like that's how in movies right now, the top are making more money than anybody's ever made before in movies. Even like with inflation and stuff, they're making more.
Yeah.
And the bottom feeders, like some of my favorite like directors and writers, even actors, they're not making anything.
Yeah.
It's crazy,
Yeah.
especially because specific example, I think of Trey Edward Schultz. Have you ever heard of him before? He just did this movie which has got destroyed, which makes me really nervous that he's not going to be able to greenlight something in the future. He just did this movie with Abel the weekend called Hurry Up Tomorrow. Got destroyed. It got like 10% Rotten Tomatoes. I went and saw it. It's not his best movie, but I actually think there's like some artistry there that like a lot of movies today we do not see.
Right.
And it's so, it feels like Abel is just trying to, kiss his own ass a little bit, but I still think that there's like a lot of cool stuff within it.
Yeah.
That a lot of people, nobody went and saw it. It makes me scared that somebody like that, who's like a true artist, he did movies like Waves, which has one of the best like soundtrack lists of all time. Waves and like It Comes a Night and Krisha. I think some of like the greatest movies of the last like 10, 15 years. And an artist like that, like he's not making any money on this like self-produced project with The Weeknd.
Right.
It's like, how is he going to get greenlit for the next thing?
Right.
It's like this top-down type of thing, and it's in music, it's in movies, it's in TV. I think there needs to be more platforms like this. It's really hard to like push that going forward and make that like because right now it's just like Spotify and like a little bit of Apple Music and people go on Amazon TV or Netflix, and that's where everybody gets their stuff.
Exactly.
But if people can like learn that like middle of the road artists who have been successful in the past, they're not making money anymore.
Right.
If we can find a way to like find, I think even when I saw that platform, was able to listen to the album, throw some money at it. I think that is like, could be a way forward.
Yeah. I agree. I think, and you said it, like you admire this artist. Right. And you want to be able to like that. His art means something to you. It may not mean something to Joe Schmo, but like it means something to you. And if you found out he was coming out with a project and you could get early access, a special screening to it, dude, Russ, the rapper, just spent like $250,000 just to get an early listening event. And he's like known for being Mr. Independent Artist, like does everything himself. To get all his fans together for like a special listening event for his top, like most loyal fans. He's like setting up interviews where his fans get to sit there in front of an audience and interview him. You know what I mean? Like just special, it's all about just building community. Right. And so if you connect with an artist that way, and you're the artist and you haven't set up an avenue for people to show you the love that they feel from your art, then you're holding yourself back, I think, in a way. Right. And it's not like you're sitting there like begging for money, obviously, because I could go and be like, my album's worth $100 a person, whatever. Like, this is what you have to pay for it. Go buy it. But it's like, no, I want it to just be open. If you rock with me, then cool. Like, go buy it. If not, it'll be out. It's like the movies. It's like going to the movie theater, paying to see a movie that features one of your favorite actors, versus just being like, I'll just wait till that comes out on Netflix. I don't really, it's not a huge deal. Right. The only problem is I wish you could pay what you want at the damn movie theater.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess that kind of defeats the purpose of what we're talking about. But
no, but I think like if people can actually, because there's so much just slop that is just given to the people through algorithms, through big budget marketing, and none of it's that good. Right. And I feel like I think that mainstream movies aren't near as good anymore as what they used to be. I think some of the mainstream music sometimes isn't as good as like it used to be. That's just, my opinion. But I think if, we're able to, we have to find a way to purport, people trying to make it in music, trying to make it in movies and TV, or else, that sort of art is just it's going to be tough to make it in the future. And like, I would like thinking back of those movies for Trey, I would go pay $100 for Waves. Exactly. Because it meant so much to me. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And I think there's other like smaller artists and bands that that album meant a lot to me. and like they probably didn't make that much money off of it, whether it's the label ripping them off or Spotify's not paying enough. Like I think something like that in the future. It was really cool. So I was like heavily influenced, and I got pumped when I saw that. It's like, and you don't get mad if somebody only pays like $1.
No, that's if I were to just release a song, you would have to stream the song 300 times.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask you to stream my song 300 times. Thank you for that $1. Like
Exactly.
I don't think people realize how Spotify and like all these streaming services just kind of screw artists, but it's just it's convenient. I like Spotify. I listen to Spotify too.
Right.
If Ty Dolla $ign, who's my favorite artist, went and dropped a project on Even, I'm paying some money for that project. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if my favorite artists are allowing early access to their music, I'm gonna go find a way to get that, because I gotta hear that. I gotta be one of the first ones to hear that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, going back to like how has it been the last like 2 or 3 years? You've produced a bunch of different projects.
Yeah. So I've shifted a little bit, and so like I dropped the SideStreet EP in 2021. I did another project, and that was my first. I used a different platform than Even. Even is pretty new, and that was like they were still very much kind of like just becoming a thing, and I don't even know if they were open to other artists besides like a handful. So I used a different platform for my second project, which was called the Lone Wolf EP, and that one I did through Bandcamp, another great platform to be able to just have people support your art directly. And I even did my third EP in 2023. The Leave Something EP was through Bandcamp as well. And so I've always kind of just tried to open that lane. And it's like, it's crazy. I've had conversations with people I don't know personally, like on Instagram or whatever, and some of them are like people who followed me from football and just know, or like Kook fans or whatever it is. And like, I'll get a notification, oh, somebody just paid $200 for your EP.
No way.
And I'm like, what? Like, it's kind of shocking in a way. Like, yes, we realize the art is priceless and everything, but I'm not going to sit there and be like, yeah, damn right, you paid two. Like, what? I'm reaching out to those people, and I'm like, you have no idea like how much this means and how encouraging it is just that I'm pouring out my, self into this music, and then you're actually finding value in it. And this person's responding like, you're a great person. Like and it's just been through like interactions on Instagram or whatever, and leading up to that beforehand, where it was just like checking in with people and just, having conversation with people, and that leads them to be like, oh, I'm going to invest in you as this person, and I believe in what you represent, and obviously the art that you're creating is a way for me to directly invest, and so I'm going to do that. But it's just like, damn, it's awesome, man. Like, you're not just cuffed to the streaming platforms hoeing you out of your money and your time or virality. Like, you don't just have to go viral. And I think social media these days has just created such a direct link from artist to fan, where in the past it was artist to label to massive marketing machine to millions of fans. You know what I mean? And that's where the big numbers come from. But the big numbers can come, in quality in a fewer amount of fans versus just like a massive marketing machine to no real connection with people. And a lot of people don't realize you can make a living as an artist with 100 loyal fans. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like $70,000, $80,000, $100,000 a year, even just catering to those people and creating art that resonates with a certain group of people. You don't have to be the next Jay-Z to obviously that's the goal. You want to get as big as possible, but
sure.
Early on, especially, I think platforms like that are huge, and that's cool that, you're considering that, or just how that could affect the film industry as well. Because I've always heard that analogy from the CEO of Even, actually, that it's like Netflix versus going to the movie theater. But to actually put that into practice, because I'm sure, is he your favorite? Would you say he's like your favorite?
Trey Schultz, he's up there as far as like he came from like a background where he poured in $50,000 of his own money to like create his first short, and it won every film fest.
Yeah, I love that.
And then he got like $200,000 from that to make like the feature version of it. And he was one of the first A24 movies.
Oh, sick.
And then A24 is in all of his movies since. Yeah, he's and he really you should watch Waves. He really incorporates music like a ton.
Yeah, I want to check that.
How over there's so many ups and downs when it comes to artistry and like putting out your own stuff. Talk about some of those, like, has there been some like really, really tough times in the last
Absolutely
3 years?
I think absolutely it's kind of like there's just so many times where you want to be like, oh, like I said, the roller coaster earlier of like, why am I even doing this? What am I doing? I'm wasting my time with this. Like, so much time put in and nothing coming back for it or anything like that. And then those times where you're in the studio and you're like, this is the greatest song ever made. I'm gonna blow up off of this, and everything in between, really. But there definitely have been tough times, and then it's like, realistically, when life kicks in and you're like, well, I want to accomplish, other things in my life. And so I could just take my degree and go get a job. I worked in tech last year just because I needed to at that point. You know what I mean? And it was like something steady at the time, but the burnout and everything in that is real too.
Sure.
And so it's kind of just pick your poison at a certain point. And I would much rather, die or just be like miserable doing music than be miserable doing some other shit for some massive tech company. And it's just like, you got to just pick your poison at a certain point and realize how much of a blessing it is, especially for me, like having developed skills that I can offer to other artists, because not everybody knows how to record themselves, not everybody knows how to produce music. And so if I can lend those to other artists and help them build up their art as well, that's a scalable business right there. So
have you been doing some of that stuff?
Yeah. So I was going to say, when you asked about like the past few years and how it's been, I kind of shifted into mixing and recording a lot, for other artists. And that was partially just from like mutual connections and people just kind of being sent my way because of like my style and how they thought I would vibe with the artists and everything like that. And it's been cool, man. Like the artists I work with are very all over the board genre wise. And so being able to produce or like engineer in different lanes only helps me as an artist creatively. Yeah. Because they're doing things that I'm like, oh, I could kind of like take that and use something like that in my song. Or when I'm mixing them, like, oh, I'm using a certain technique for this style that I could maybe try to throw into mine and like add a new element to my traditional sound. Or it's just a very rewarding experience to collaborate with people and to offer. There's nothing like more satisfying to me than sending an artist a mix, like a final mix of their song, and they're like, holy shit, this is amazing. Like, I cannot believe that we started as, just a demo or like playing my guitar and then turned it into this and da 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 da. It's like the most rewarding feeling ever when you can help someone else bring their vision to life like that. Is incredible. Which I'm sure you've experienced too, just like being part of filmmaking and having somebody come up with a vision and a script and a storyboard and then just bringing that to life. Yeah. And then you're like, it's exactly how we drew it up. It's like, it's so great. It's awesome.
For sure. So going forward, where do you see, well, real quick, state of music, just in general? Well, how do you feel like artists are doing here in LA? Sure. Well, what's kind of the vibe? Are people, is music industry doing well?
Yeah, I try not to like jump into the whole like, oh, music today sucks and everything is oversaturated and everybody sounds the same and da 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 da. Of course, like with accessibility coming out, like, or the barriers of entry being very low to make your own music these days, of course you're going to get people who are just kind of like regurgitating whatever they take in or just trying to reproduce things that they hear and be the next so-and-so. Yeah. But for every one of those, I hope that there's two people who are genuinely making some unique and original things. And so when it comes to like originality in music, I can still find artists that I'm like, whoa, I've never heard anything like this. And that actually really grabs me. So I also don't think I'm in this like position to speak on like the state of the music industry in general. All I know is that when it comes to that, I feel like there's definitely a shift in people realizing like, okay, I don't actually need you, big label machine who's just going to screw me out of, or these smoke and mirrors with these big, advances and label deals, and I'm going to owe you for the rest of my life. And there is more of a shift towards like, I can build this on my own, because social media just opens up the door to fans. Like it just opens up the door to creative freedom and being able to connect directly with people and cut out the massive middleman, you know what I mean? And you also have the chance of going viral, and then that always takes it, you know, another to another level. The thing about labels these days too, from what I've heard and seen, is that they're not going to come in with anything to offer until you're already popping. So if you're doing everything right and you're getting a following, label's going to swoop in and say, oh, we can, you know, take this to the next level or whatever. But I feel like you're already trending that direction. So why not just keep going with it? Just depends on everybody's goals and what they want to accomplish on an individual level. But I don't know, that's kind of the mindset that I have in this whole thing is, and if a label came in and there was a deal that was great for me, then maybe it works. But I'm not closed off to anything. I'm not like, you know, gung-ho about any certain route. But
yeah, that's what I think is cool about, like, there's so much education now and so many people stories of people that have gotten fucked over, that people kind of like know that like there's some scumbag, whether they're agents or like labels, they know what to kind of look out for, so you can't get taken advantage of as much. It still happens, but I mean, it's the business side to me is always really interesting to hear. But I totally agree that like you know, somebody can get hot for a second. Really, anybody can get hot for a second. It's not even really up to them. It's whatever the algorithm thinks is like good at that point.
Exactly.
You know, but they can be hot for a second. That doesn't mean that they can build a career.
Right.
Just like what you said of like, if I have 100 like loyal people, that turns into 200. Even if it's only like 1,000, that can sustain a career.
Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely. And if it's at, especially in music, like if it's at that point, sorry to cut you off, but like if it's at that point of 1,000, then it's kind of just like, okay, well, there's no cap when it gets to that point. You know what I mean? It's just going to keep growing and growing. And those fans are going to show that everybody shares music. So they're going to show their like-minded friends and with similar tastes in music. And it's just going to keep growing that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
at that point, it just turns into like a consistency game.
Exactly.
You know,
literally is.
Which I admire, that you've always like, you know, you continue to kick out new stuff.
Yeah.
Over the years.
I got to get better at it. Honestly, I feel like that's one thing that I got to do more consistently is get more out in front of people. And that's the curse of being Mr. DIY 100%er, like do everything myself.
Burnout.
It's a burnout, but it's also like perfectionism really kicks in. And that last like 20% of a song is like the final like mixing and mastering stages of a song where you're really trying to get it to shine like a real like radio record or whatever. Is where you just spend the most amount of time because you know you're right at the finish line. You're like, I got to get it perfect before it hits anybody's ears. And that's where, like I was talking about earlier, just getting a group of people that I trust when I'm like, I feel like it's not ready yet, but it's still could be good enough.
Close,
like, here's it here. And then everybody's like, yeah, bro, sounds good. Maybe change this, but then other than that, like ship it, you know?
Right.
So that's huge, but
that's cool.
Yeah.
Who would you say is your biggest influence right now? Who's the best out there?
Artist wise?
Yeah.
I always come back to Ty. He's my favorite artist, Ty Dolla $ign.
Yeah.
Because and I actually discovered him. He has a song with Marc from Marc's East Hollywood EP from like 2017, I want to say. Called That's Love, and Ty came on, and that's when I was first. I knew Ty Dolla $ign. Like he's featured on like every damn song of the 2010s, pretty much.
Yeah.
And he's got his own stuff too. But I hadn't really like dove deep into his stuff. But when he came on in that song, I was like, yo, I need to go listen to Ty Dolla $ign's entire catalog right now. And I basically did, and I was his like, he's got this crazy unique voice. I think that's what draws me to new artists in general, is like if they have a unique voice that doesn't just sound like they're trying to be somebody else. He's got like this raspy, soulful, crazy, talented singing voice. He also raps. He's got bars. He also is an instrumentalist, and that's what a lot of people don't realize. He'll like just shred on the bass at his shows or pick up a guitar and just start going crazy. And he's like a rock star for the most part. And he can also just bounce on so many different genres. And I think that's why I like him the most. And that's probably why he influences me the most, is because it kind of gives me the freedom to be like, oh, I don't have to stay in this pocket here. I could do like an R&B song over here, and then like an EDM style song over here, dance stuff, and everything in between. And that kind of gives me I don't know. He is probably my biggest inspiration, though. I'd say when it comes to artistry.
That's sweet.
And then obviously Marc too. Like I was a fan of Marc's before I knew him, obviously, and being in close quarters with him and being like seeing how he works, and also just insane talent and writing ability too. He's written a lot of crazy songs that you probably don't realize. He's written for Chris Brown, Sabrina Carpenter, lots of people. That's like Charlie Puth, like all these people. His writing catalog is insane. And so that's another thing. Like just songwriting has been another big thing that I've been trying to get better at, and he's always somebody I go to with that. So.
Nice. Yeah. So if you could go, kind of finishing up here, if you could go back, tell yourself something when you first started your music career. Mm-hmm. You know, what would you tell yourself?
Don't be afraid to hear no. Just like put yourself out there a little bit more and ask questions. And it's better to be embarrassed in the moment, right? Whatever that quote is, embarrassed for a moment than a fool forever, by not knowing something and being too prideful to ask questions. Or it's easy to get into a place, like especially in the music industry, where you have to like act like you know what's going on all the time and like, oh yeah, like I know about all this stuff, when really you're like, what the fuck's going on right now? So just being able to humble yourself and just be curious and ask questions. And if somebody's like, how do you not know this? Then, okay, they're a dick anyway. Why are you hanging out with them? Yeah. But like, just be open to asking questions, be open to learning, and don't be afraid to hear no if it's an opportunity you're seeking, because then you'll be better off knowing that you don't have to spend time pondering that route. So
for sure.
Yeah.
And so then what's the dream? What's the biggest dream? You can dream biggest, you know. Yeah. What is it for you? Whether it's just like a feeling, whether it's, you know, being self-sufficient off music. What do you see it as?
I'd say definitely being self-sufficient off of the music. Just the freedom to create, just waking up and just being able to have an idea, bring it to life, share it with the world, and be able to live off of that. Essentially, but be able to connect with people, like in that, build a community. The dream is really to build a community of people, to find a community of people who resonate with the art that I create, and to eventually, you know, become sustainable off of that. And
that's
absolutely.
Sweet, dude. Absolutely. Well, yeah, I appreciate you coming on, man. Isaac Dotson, everybody, go check out SideStreet. He's got his EP out now, going to Even. I'll put the link down below. Go check that out. Appreciate it coming on, dude.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, man.
Baby, I've been on my mind for a while with no one but love to blame. It's funny how it starts with a smile, but ain't nobody safe. I was doing better on my own, with no skin in any games. Cause surviving's been a hell on earth, and love just fans the flames. But who said love was gonna save me?